Sarah Mitchell stood at her kitchen counter, staring at the cream-colored envelope that had arrived that morning. Her name was written across the front in elegant, unfamiliar handwriting. Not typed, not printed, but carefully penned in deep blue ink. There was no return address, just a postmark from Portland, Oregon, a city she'd never visited and knew no one in. She turned the envelope over in her hands, feeling its weight. It was heavier than a typical letter, as if multiple pages were folded inside. The paper felt expensive, textured beneath her fingertips, the kind of stationery people used for important occasions, weddings, graduations, or perhaps condolences. Sarah hesitated. Something about this envelope felt significant, and she wasn't sure she was ready for significance. Not today, not on a Tuesday morning when she was already running late for work and hadn't had nearly enough coffee. Her phone buzzed on the counter, breaking her trance. A text from her best friend, Maya. Coffee later? I need to vent about Marcus. Sarah smiled despite herself and typed back. Always. 5 p.m. at the grind. Perfect. You're the best. Sarah set her phone down and looked at the envelope again. She could open it now, or she could wait until after work when she had time to properly absorb whatever was inside. The sensible part of her, the part that had kept her life running smoothly for the past 32 years, said to wait. But Sarah had always been curious, sometimes to a fault. Her sister Emily used to tease her about it when they were kids, hiding Sarah's birthday presents in increasingly creative places because Sarah couldn't resist hunting for them. Sarah's throat tightened at the thought of her sister. It had been 3 years since the accident, 3 years since she'd lost the only sibling she'd ever have, the person who knew her better than anyone else in the world. Time was supposed to heal all wounds, everyone said so, but Sarah had discovered that time just made the sharp edges of grief a little duller. The absence never went away. She slid her finger under the envelope seal and carefully opened it. Inside were several pages, folded together, covered in that same elegant handwriting. Sarah unfolded them and began to read. Dear Sarah, you don't know me, but I knew your sister Emily. My name is Charlotte Brennan, and I met Emily 6 months before she died. We worked together on a community garden project in the neighborhood where I live, or lived, I suppose I should say, because I'm moving soon. I've debated for a long time whether to reach out to you. Emily spoke of you often, with such love and admiration, and I know her death devastated you. I didn't want to intrude on your grief or stir up painful memories. But recently, I found something that belongs to you, and I believe Emily would want you to have it. Before I explain further, I need to tell you about your sister and the time we spent together. Emily came into my life during one of my darkest periods. I'd just gone through a difficult divorce, and I was struggling to find purpose and meaning in my suddenly solitary existence. The community garden was my attempt to reconnect with the world, to put my hands in the soil and grow something beautiful when everything else felt like it was falling apart. Emily showed up one Saturday morning in April, wearing paint-stained jeans and a sun hat covered in hand-drawn flowers. She introduced herself to everyone there, learned all our names within minutes, and proceeded to transform our little patch of earth with her energy and creativity. She painted a mural on the storage shed, organized potlucks, and somehow convinced the grumpy elderly man who lived next door to donate his collection of vintage garden tools. But more than that, she listened. Really listened. She had this way of making you feel like you were the only person in the world when she talked to you, like your thoughts and feelings mattered deeply to her. In the months we worked together, she became not just a friend, but a confidant. We talked about everything, our hopes, our fears, our dreams for the future. She told me about growing up with you, about how you were always the responsible one, the sister who took care of everyone else, who sacrificed your own dreams to make sure Emily could pursue hers. She told me about the time you worked 2 jobs to help pay for her art school tuition, about how you supported her when she decided to move across the country to chase an opportunity, even though it meant you'd be alone. Emily carried a lot of guilt about that, Sarah. She loved you fiercely, but she worried that she'd taken more than she'd given, that she'd been selfish in pursuing her dreams while you put yours on hold. I'm telling you this not to make you sad, but because I think it's important for you to know that she saw everything you did for her and she appreciated it more than she probably ever expressed. One day, toward the end of summer, Emily arrived at the garden with a notebook, a beautiful leather-bound journal with gold-edged pages. She told me she'd started writing letters to you, letters she planned to give you someday when the time was right. She said there were things she needed to say, apologies she needed to make, memories she wanted to preserve. She worked on these letters for weeks, writing during our breaks in the garden, filling page after page with her thoughts. I never read them. That felt like an invasion of privacy, but I could see how important they were to her. She would smile while she wrote sometimes, and other times I'd notice tears in her eyes. 3 days before the accident, Emily gave me the journal for safekeeping. She said she was driving up north for a work project and didn't want to risk losing it in transit. She made me promise that if anything ever happened to her, I would make sure you received it. At the time, I thought it was just Emily being dramatic. She had a flair for the theatrical, as I'm sure you remember. I never imagined I'd actually need to fulfill that promise. After she died, I couldn't bring myself to contact you. I was a stranger, and you were drowning in grief. What right did I have to insert myself into your pain? So I kept the journal, waiting for the right moment, the right words, the right way to explain. But recently, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I'm starting treatment next week, and the doctors are optimistic, but the diagnosis has reminded me that life is fragile and uncertain. I realized I couldn't wait any longer. You deserve to have Emily's words, her love, her final thoughts. I'm mailing the journal separately, in a package that should arrive in the next few days. I wanted you to have this letter first to prepare you for what's coming and to give you some context. I'm sorry for the delay in getting this to you. I'm sorry for your loss. And I'm sorry if reading Emily's letters brings up pain you've worked hard to process. But I also hope they bring you comfort, closure, and a sense of connection to the sister who loved you so much. If you ever want to talk, my phone number is at the bottom of this letter. But I understand if you don't. I'm just the messenger, a stranger who was lucky enough to know Emily briefly and to witness the love she had for you. Take care of yourself, Sarah. With warmth and sympathy, Charlotte Brennan. Sarah read the letter 3 times, her coffee growing cold in its mug, her eyes blurring with tears. A journal. Emily had written her letters. Letters that had been sitting with a stranger for 3 years, waiting to find their way home. She looked at the phone number at the bottom of the page, written in the same careful script as the rest of the letter. Charlotte Brennan, a name she'd never heard before, connected to a part of Emily's life Sarah had known nothing about. The realization stung more than she expected. Emily had been living an entirely separate existence that summer, making friends, working on projects, filling a journal with thoughts meant for Sarah, but never shared. How many other parts of Emily's life had Sarah been unaware of? How many conversations had they never had, secrets never shared? But beneath the sting was something else. Anticipation, hope, maybe even a little fear. Emily's words, preserved and waiting. It felt like a gift and a ghost all at once. Sarah picked up her phone and texted her boss. I'm not feeling well. Taking a sick day. Sorry for the short notice. The response came quickly. No problem. Feel better. She wouldn't feel better, not today. But she would wait for the package, and when it arrived, she would finally hear what Emily had been trying to tell her. Sarah spent the rest of Tuesday in a strange liminal space, unable to focus on anything but unwilling to do nothing. She cleaned her apartment, even though it was already clean. She organized her bookshelf alphabetically, then by color, then by size, before giving up and putting everything back the way it was. She made lunch, but couldn't eat it. She turned on the television, but couldn't follow the plot of anything she tried to watch. Maya called around 3. Hey, are we still on for coffee? I can come to you, if you're not feeling well. Sarah had forgotten about their plans. I'm okay, she said, then reconsidered. Actually, no, I'm not. Can you come over? On my way. 20 minutes. Maya arrived in 15, carrying a bag from Sarah's favorite Thai place and a bottle of wine. She took one look at Sarah's face and set everything down on the counter. What happened? Sarah handed her Charlotte's letter. Maya read it slowly, her expression shifting from curiosity to surprise to something that looked like cautious joy. When she finished, she looked up at Sarah. Oh my God. Sarah, this is. I don't even know what to say. Emily wrote you letters. Apparently, Sarah's voice sounded flat, even to her own ears. This is amazing, Maya said. You're going to get to hear from her again. It's like, I don't know, like getting one more conversation with her. Or it's like having a wound reopened that I've spent 3 years trying to heal. Maya set the letter down and moved closer, pulling Sarah into a hug. It can be both, she said quietly. It's okay for it to be both. Sarah let herself be held, breathing in Maya's familiar perfume, something floral and expensive that her boyfriend Marcus had given her for Christmas. Maya had been Sarah's friend since college, had been there through every major moment of Sarah's adult life, including the worst one. If anyone could understand the complicated knot of emotions Sarah was feeling, it was Maya. They ate the Thai food straight from the containers, sitting on Sarah's couch with the wine bottle between them. Maya talked about Marcus and his inability to commit to anything more than month-to-month plans, but Sarah could tell her heart wasn't in the venting. She kept glancing at Sarah, monitoring, making sure she was okay. You can talk about Marcus, Sarah said. I'm not that fragile. I know you're not fragile. You're the strongest person I know. But this is a lot to process. I don't even know what I'm feeling, Sarah admitted. I'm excited, but I'm also terrified. What if the letters say things I'm not ready to hear? What if Emily was angry with me? What if? Stop, Maya interrupted gently. You're catastrophizing. Emily loved you. Charlotte's letter made that clear. Whatever's in that journal, it's coming from a place of love. You're right. Sarah took a sip of wine. I feel like I've finally reached a place where I can think about Emily without falling apart, and now everything's going to be stirred up again. Maybe that's not a bad thing, Maya said. Maybe you've been a little too okay. Sarah looked at her sharply. What's that supposed to mean? I just mean that you've been so focused on moving forward and being strong that I'm not sure you've actually dealt with everything. You threw yourself into work. You sold your car because it reminded you of road trips with Emily. You avoid talking about her. It's like you've locked that part of your life away. That's not fair, Sarah said, but even as the words left her mouth, she wondered if Maya was right. I'm not trying to be harsh, Maya said. I'm just saying that maybe these letters are an opportunity to actually grieve instead of just existing. They sat in silence for a while, passing the wine bottle back and forth. Outside, the afternoon light was fading, casting long shadows across Sarah's living room. She'd moved into this apartment after Emily died, unable to stay in the place where they'd shared so many memories. It was smaller, more sterile, decorated with furniture that had no history. Sometimes she wondered if she'd been trying to erase the past rather than honor it. When do you think the package will arrive? Maya asked. Charlotte said a few days. Could be tomorrow, could be Friday. Do you want me to be here when you open it? Sarah considered. Maybe. I don't know. I might need to read the letters alone first. That's fair. But promise me you'll call if you need me, even if it's the middle of the night. I promise. Maya left around 7, making Sarah swear to eat the leftover Thai food and text her with updates. After she was gone, Sarah stood at her living room window, watching the city lights flicker on as dusk settled over the skyline. She thought about Emily, about the last time they'd talked, a rushed phone conversation where Emily had been distracted, working on some project, promising to call back later. She never did. 2 days after that conversation, she was gone. Sarah had replayed that conversation hundreds of times, searching for clues, for some indication of what Emily had been thinking or feeling. But it had been so ordinary, so mundane. They talked about nothing important. The weather, a recipe Sarah wanted to try, a funny thing that had happened at Emily's work. How could Sarah have known it would be their last conversation? And now, impossibly, there would be more. Emily's voice reaching across the years, preserved in ink and paper. Sarah didn't know whether to be grateful or terrified. The package arrived on Thursday, delivered by a young postal worker who seemed utterly unaware that she was handing Sarah something that might change everything. It was a simple brown box, carefully wrapped and addressed in Charlotte's distinctive handwriting. Sarah signed for it, carried it inside, and set it on her dining table. Then she stared at it for 10 minutes, unable to bring herself to open it. Her phone rang. Maya. Did it come? Her friend asked without preamble. How did you know? Psychic connection. Or maybe just good timing. Have you opened it? Not yet. Do you want me to come over? Sarah thought about it. No, she said finally. But stay on the phone with me? Of course. Sarah used scissors to carefully cut through the packing tape, trying not to damage anything inside. The box was packed with bubble wrap, and nested within it was the journal Charlotte had described, a beautiful leather-bound book with gold-edged pages and a ribbon bookmark. There was also another note from Charlotte, brief this time. Sarah, I hope these letters bring you peace. Emily was a beautiful soul, and she loved you very much. Take your time reading them. Be gentle with yourself. C. The journal felt heavier than it should have, weighted with meaning and memory. Sarah ran her fingers over the leather cover, noting the slight wear at the corners, evidence that Emily had carried it with her, handled it frequently. What does it look like? Maya asked from the phone. It's beautiful, Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. It's so Emily, elegant and artistic and thoughtful. Are you going to read it now? Sarah carried the journal to her couch, tucking her legs beneath her. I think so. I don't know if I can wait. Okay. I'm going to let you go, but call me after, okay? Or during if you need to. Anytime. Thank you, Maya. Love you. Love you too. Sarah ended the call and opened the journal to the first page. Emily's handwriting, familiar and achingly nostalgic, filled the paper. Dear Sarah, it began. Sarah took a deep breath and started to read. Chapter 4, First Letter. Dear Sarah, if you're reading this, something has gone terribly wrong. That's a dramatic way to start, I know, but it's the truth. I'm writing these letters as a kind of insurance policy against all the things I've left unsaid between us, all the conversations I've been too afraid or too selfish to have. I'm sitting in a community garden right now, watching the sun set over the city, and I'm thinking about all the ways I've failed you as a sister. That probably sounds melodramatic, but bear with me. I promise I have a point. Do you remember when I was 17 and you were 21, and you decided to skip your senior year of college to work full-time at that restaurant so I could go to art school? I never properly thanked you for that. I mean, I said thank you, obviously, but I never really acknowledged the magnitude of what you did, the dreams you deferred for me. You wanted to be a teacher, Sarah. You were studying education, you were passionate about it, and you were good at it. I saw you with kids. You lit up around them. You understood them in this beautiful, intuitive way. And you gave that up for me. I told myself at the time that it was temporary, that you could always go back and finish your degree later. And you did eventually graduate, but by then the momentum was gone. The passion had dimmed. You ended up in an administrative job at that nonprofit instead of in a classroom where you belonged. And that's my fault. I never told you this, but I overheard you crying one night about a year after I started at the art school. You were on the phone with Mom, and you were trying to sound upbeat, but I could hear the strain in your voice. You told her you were happy you could help me, but you missed school. You missed having a purpose beyond just paying bills. It broke my heart, but I was too much of a coward to talk to you about it. I was so wrapped up in my own world, my own ambitions, that I convinced myself you were fine, that you wanted to help me, that everything was okay. That's the thing about being the younger sister. I always saw you as invincible, as someone who had it all figured out. It never occurred to me that you might be struggling too, that you might need support the way I always needed yours. I'm writing this now because I'm starting to realize how much I've taken from you without giving back. I'm 28 years old, and I've spent most of my adult life being the irresponsible little sister, while you've been the rock everyone depends on. That's not fair to you. I want to do better, Sarah. I want to be the sister you deserve, the one who shows up for you the way you've always shown up for me. I want to ask about your life, your dreams, your disappointments. I want to stop making everything about me. But I also want you to know that I see you. I see how hard you work, how much you care, how you put everyone else first. I see the sacrifices you've made, and I'm grateful for every single one, even if I've done a terrible job of showing it. I guess what I'm trying to say is thank you. Thank you for being the best big sister anyone could ask for. Thank you for your patience, your generosity, your unwavering support. Thank you for loving me even when I didn't deserve it. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry for being selfish, for taking advantage of your kindness, for not being there for you the way you've been there for me. I'm going to change, Sarah. I promise. Starting today, I'm going to be a better sister, a better friend, a better person. I love you more than words can express. Your grateful and slightly regretful little sister, Emily. Sarah's hands were shaking so badly she had to set the journal down. Tears streamed down her face, and she made no effort to wipe them away. She hadn't known. She'd never known that Emily had overheard that phone call, had never imagined that Emily carried guilt about the choices Sarah had made. The truth was, Sarah had been happy to help Emily pursue her dreams. Yes, leaving college had been difficult, and yes, sometimes she wondered about the path not taken. But she never regretted supporting her sister, never resented the sacrifices. Emily's happiness had always been worth it, but Emily hadn't known that. Emily had spent years carrying unnecessary guilt, believing she'd somehow stolen Sarah's future. The misunderstanding broke Sarah's heart. She wanted to call Emily, to reassure her, to tell her that everything was okay, that Sarah had never blamed her for anything. But she couldn't. Emily was gone, and this conversation was 3 years too late. Sarah picked up her phone and texted Maya. I read the first letter. It's a lot. The response came immediately. Do you need me? Sarah considered. Part of her wanted Maya there, wanted the comfort of a friend's presence. But another part of her needed to do this alone, needed to sit with these emotions without diluting them or seeking escape. Not yet, she typed. But thank you. She set her phone aside and picked up the journal again. There were dozens more pages filled with Emily's handwriting, dozens more letters waiting to be read. Sarah didn't know if she could handle them all tonight, but she wasn't ready to stop either. She turned to the next letter and began to read. The second letter was lighter in tone, filled with memories from their childhood. Emily wrote about the time they tried to build a treehouse in their backyard and had ended up with nothing but a pile of mismatched wood and a lot of splinters. She wrote about their mother's disastrous attempt at baking a birthday cake that had somehow caught fire, about their father's terrible dad jokes that Emily had secretly loved. Reading these memories, Sarah found herself laughing through her tears. She'd forgotten some of these moments, or at least had let them fade into the background of her mind. Seeing them again through Emily's words brought them back to vivid life. The third letter was dated a week after the first. In it, Emily wrote about a conversation she'd had with Charlotte at the community garden about loneliness and connection and the ways people drift apart without meaning to. I've been thinking a lot about relationships lately, Emily wrote. Not romantic ones. God knows I'm a disaster in that department. But friendships, family bonds, the connections that are supposed to sustain us through life. I realized something today, Sarah. I realized that we haven't really talked. Really talked in months. Maybe longer. We text, sure, and we have those quick phone calls where we update each other on the basic facts of our lives. But when's the last time we had a real conversation? When's the last time I asked you how you're actually doing, not just how are you as a formality? I can't remember, and that scares me. We used to tell each other everything. Do you remember? When we were kids, we'd stay up late talking about our dreams, our fears, the boys we liked, the teachers we hated. You knew everything about me, and I knew everything about you. When did that change? Was it gradual, or was there a specific moment when we started keeping things from each other? I think maybe it happened when I moved away for art school. Physical distance created emotional distance, and we never quite closed that gap. And then you started working all the time, and I got busy with my career, and suddenly we were sisters who loved each other but didn't really know each other anymore. That needs to change, Sarah. Life is too short and too uncertain to take our relationship for granted. I want to know about your life, the real stuff, not just the surface level updates. I want to know what makes you happy, what keeps you up at night, what you dream about when you let yourself dream. I want to know if you're satisfied with your job or if you're just going through the motions. I want to know if you're lonely, if you're fulfilled, if you're genuinely okay or just pretending to be. And I want to share my life with you too. Not the curated version I post on social media or the highlight reel I present in our brief phone calls, but the messy, complicated reality. I want to tell you about my insecurities, my failures, my moments of doubt. I want to be vulnerable with you again. Is that selfish? Am I asking too much? I don't know. But I do know that I miss you, Sarah. I miss the sister I used to have, the one who knew me inside and out. And I wonder if you miss me too. Next month, I'm going to come visit you. Not just for a day or a weekend, but for a whole week. We're going to sit down and actually talk face to face, no distractions. We're going to reconnect. We're going to remember why we matter to each other. I'm nervous about it, honestly. What if too much time has passed? What if we've grown too far apart to find our way back? But I have to try. You're my sister, Sarah. You're my person. And I refuse to lose you to time and distance and busy schedules. So get ready. I'm coming home, and we're going to fix this. Love always, Emily. Sarah's breath caught. Emily had been planning to visit. She'd wanted to reconnect, to bridge the gap that had grown between them. But the visit never happened because Emily died 2 weeks after writing this letter. Sarah felt a wave of crushing regret. Emily had been right, they had drifted apart. They'd let the busyness of life eclipse their relationship, had settled for shallow check-ins instead of meaningful connection. And now it was too late to fix it. Or was it? Obviously. Emily was gone, and nothing could change that. But maybe reading these letters was Emily's way of creating the conversation she'd never had the chance to have in person. Maybe this was the reconnection she'd been hoping for, just taking a different form than either of them had imagined. Sarah wiped her eyes and continued reading. The next several letters were a mixture of confession and reflection. Emily wrote about her struggles with anxiety, about her fear that she'd never be good enough as an artist, about a failed relationship that had left her feeling unworthy of love. She wrote about their parents' divorce when they were teenagers and how it had affected her more than she'd ever admitted at the time. She wrote about feeling like an imposter in her career, like any day someone would realize she had no idea what she was doing. With each letter, Sarah felt like she was discovering a version of Emily she'd never fully known. Not because Emily had been dishonest, but because Sarah had never asked the right questions, had never dug beneath the surface. Emily had always seemed so confident, so self-assured, so together. Sarah had never realized how much of that was performance, a mask Emily wore to protect herself. It was late when Sarah finally set the journal aside, having read about 15 letters. Her eyes were sore from crying, her body exhausted from the emotional marathon. But she also felt something she hadn't felt in 3 years: closeness to Emily. Not the haunting presence of grief, but the warm, comforting sense of connection. She texted Maya, "I'm okay. The letters are beautiful and heartbreaking and perfect. I'll call you tomorrow." Maya's response was immediate. "Proud of you. Sleep well." Sarah doubted she would sleep well, but she appreciated the sentiment. She carried the journal to her bedroom, setting it carefully on her nightstand. Tomorrow she would read more. Tonight, she would sit with everything she'd learned and try to process the complicated tangle of emotions Emily's words had stirred up. Before turning off the light, Sarah whispered into the darkness, "I miss you too, Emily. I always have." Friday morning, Sarah called in sick to work again. Her boss was understanding. Sarah rarely took time off, so a few sick days wouldn't raise eyebrows. The truth was, she couldn't imagine going to the office and pretending to care about budget reports and staff meetings when Emily's journal was sitting on her nightstand, full of unread letters. She made coffee, settled onto her couch with a blanket, and opened the journal to where she'd left off. The next letter was dated almost 2 weeks after the previous one, and it started with an apology. "Dear Sarah, I'm sorry I haven't called you this week. I know I promised I would, and I fully intended to, but life got hectic and I kept putting it off, telling myself I'd call tomorrow, and then tomorrow would come and go, and I still hadn't done it. That's no excuse. You deserve better from me. But I want to tell you about something that happened yesterday that made me think of you. I was at the community garden, working on a new section we're developing for kids. Charlotte had this idea to create an educational space where local schools could bring students to learn about plants and sustainability and the environment. We've been building raised beds, painting signs, gathering supplies. Yesterday, a group of third graders came for a trial run. They were so excited, Sarah, bouncing off the walls, asking a million questions, touching everything. Their teacher was trying to maintain order, but honestly, the chaos was perfect. That's what learning should look like, especially for kids that age. I watched one little girl, her name was Amara, discover a ladybug on a tomato plant. She was mesmerized, following it from leaf to leaf, narrating its journey to anyone who would listen. The ladybug is exploring. Now it's climbing. Oh, it's flying away. Her enthusiasm was infectious. And watching all of them, I thought of you. I thought about how you'd wanted to be a teacher, how you talked about creating learning experiences that would spark curiosity and joy in kids. I thought about how you'd given up that dream to support mine, and I felt this overwhelming sense of injustice. You would have been an incredible teacher, Sarah. You have this gift for making people feel seen and heard and valued. I've watched you with kids at family gatherings. You get down on their level. You ask them real questions. You treat them like actual human beings instead of inferior adults. Kids love you because you genuinely love them. So, why aren't you teaching? I mean, I know why in the practical sense. You took a different path. Life happened, opportunities came and went. But is it really too late? You're 31. That's not old, despite what society might tell us about women and aging. You could go back to school, get your teaching credential, start a second career. Have you thought about it? Do you ever wonder what your life would look like if you'd followed that original dream? I'm not trying to make you feel bad. God knows I've made you feel bad enough already. But I am trying to encourage you. It's not too late, Sarah. It's never too late to pursue something that matters to you. And if the obstacle is money, if you're thinking that you can't afford to go back to school or take time off work, then let me help. I'm doing okay financially. I'm not rich, but I'm comfortable. I could contribute to tuition or help with living expenses or whatever you need. I know that might sound presumptuous, and maybe you're perfectly happy with your current job, and I'm projecting my own stuff onto you. If that's the case, ignore me. But if there's even a tiny part of you that still dreams of teaching, I want to support that dream the way you supported mine. Think about it, okay? And call me. I miss your voice. Love, Emily. Sarah stared at the words, feeling a familiar ache in her chest. Teaching. She hadn't let herself think seriously about teaching in years. After leaving college to help Emily, and then eventually finishing her degree part-time while working full-time, she'd ended up in nonprofit administration almost by accident. It paid well, it was stable, and it was fine. Fine. That was the word that best described her life. Fine. Not bad, not miserable, but not joyful either. Just fine. The truth was, she had wondered what her life would have looked like if she'd stayed in school, if she'd gotten her teaching credential, if she'd ended up in a classroom instead of an office. She'd wondered it a lot, actually. Usually late at night when sleep wouldn't come and her mind wandered down the paths not taken. But she'd always dismissed those thoughts as useless nostalgia, the grass is greener syndrome that afflicted everyone at some point. She'd made her choices, and those choices had led her here. There was no point dwelling on alternate realities. Except Emily was telling her it wasn't too late. Emily was offering to help, to support Sarah's dreams the way Sarah had supported hers. And Emily had been right about something else too. Sarah wasn't old. 32 wasn't too late to make a change, to pursue something that actually mattered. Sarah's phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was Maya. Hey, Sarah answered. I was going to call you later. I couldn't wait. How are you? How are the letters? There are a lot. Em was planning to visit, to reconnect with me. And in one of the letters, she's encouraging me to go back to school for teaching. Teaching, Maya repeated. That was your original dream, wasn't it? Before everything with Emily happened. Yeah. Have you thought about it? Going back to teaching? Not seriously. Not until now. But you're thinking about it now. It wasn't a question. Maya knew Sarah well enough to hear the possibility in her voice. I don't know, Sarah said. It feels crazy. I'm 32 years old. I have a stable job. I have an apartment and bills and responsibilities. You don't just throw all that away to chase a teenage dream. Why not? Maya asked. People make career changes all the time. And you're not that old, despite what your tone is suggesting. You could easily have 30 or 40 more years of working life ahead of you. Don't you want to spend those years doing something you actually care about? It's not that simple. It could be, though. Sarah, I've known you for over a decade, and I can count on one hand the number of times you've talked about your job with any enthusiasm. You go through the motions, you're good at what you do, but it doesn't light you up. Teaching used to light you up. Sarah didn't respond immediately. She was thinking about Amara, the little girl Emily had written about, discovering a ladybug with such joy and wonder. She was thinking about her own childhood, about the teachers who had made learning feel like magic, who had seen something special in Sarah and encouraged her to pursue education as a career. What if I'm not good at it? Sarah finally said. What if I've idealized teaching in my head and the reality is disappointing? Then at least you'll know, Maya said. At least you won't spend the rest of your life wondering what if. But honestly, Sarah, I think you'd be amazing.